You are listening to Two Babies in a Business, a podcast where Peter and I talk about life, our partnership through business, kids, and each other. All right, we're drawing our topics out of a old tin can. It's one of Peter's, which makes me nervous.
Oh, it'll be a good one then.
Addiction. Addicts raising addicts. Why don't you give us a little background on your topics here?
Yeah, so actually all of these topics that I put into our old tin can are actually topics that are chapters in the book that I'm planning to write called Life by Design. And so obviously I don't want to get too much into the book, but I thought by talking about these, it might help me write my book. So this one is kind of an interesting one because, well, first of all, obviously, if somebody's has addictions or is living their life with addictions, then they're not necessarily living their life by design. So I guess that's kind of the context of it in the context of the book. But when I sort of subtopic the chapter title, it's Addicts Raising Addicts, because I think for me, addiction has been something that I've had struggled with throughout my life in different forms and different ways. Never been some kind of hardcore addict or anything like that, but certainly have had my share of challenges with addiction. And I want to say that in context of a lot of people think about addiction and think about, all those bad people over there doing really hard drugs. But to me, when I say addicts raising addicts, I actually think that as a society, we have huge addictions to sugar, addictions to carbohydrates. Alcohol is super prevalent and toxic and bad and addictive. We're addicted to our phones. We're addicted to work. Addictions, we're actually in my opinion, a very addicted and sick society. And so I wanted to actually in this book cover the topic of addictions on a way broader scale than just all those bad people over there doing methamphetamines or crack cocaine or whatever it is. Those people that we think about as addicts, we're all probably addicts in some way, shape, or form to something. And I think the beginning of living your life by design is recognizing what are your addictions. Is it even guilty pleasures? Is it Instagram? Is it whatever, right? So that's just to introduce the topic. I think we're all addicts in some way, shape, or form.
There you go. I think for me, this topic, I've always said about myself that I have an addictive personality, right? Like once I like something and once I'm into it, I'm kind of all in and I'm in. And I feel like if anyone has known me the past, I don't know, probably a couple of years, I was like really into seed cycling for a while, right? So you're like having certain seeds on different days based on your, for a woman, your cycle, for, some people based on the moon. I was doing it based on the moon. And, I think that addiction led to, not that seeds are bad, not that doing that every day was bad, but definitely the vehicle at which I was getting my seeds, a yogurt, I developed a really bad sensitivity to it because, I don't end up varying things. But I also think, it's an interesting topic when it comes to addiction is, I think sometimes we call them habits. I think that's how we kind of maybe make them seem not as, like you said, when someone says addict, you think about someone kind of in the gutter, literally and figuratively, whereas, we'll say, oh, I have a bad habit. And I think a lot of those habits are addictions, right? I think that living a life by design is about obviously creating good habits for yourself, but also being aware. I think for me, awareness is the big piece. And I think once you have kids, you become more aware of things because they're quick to point out, oh, you always do that, or why are you doing that again, or what are you doing over here? Yeah, I guess that's how I would digest the topic.
Yeah, well, I'll just say that I'll just I guess admit that I've always struggled with alcohol. For most of my adult life, I've, had various levels of addiction to alcohol throughout my life. Obviously, sometimes worse, sometimes better, but alcohol has always been there, I guess. It's interesting. I went hiking with my friends yesterday, and we were talking about alcohol. One of my friends has some pretty bad issues with alcohol, and we were talking about how terrible and toxic and bad it is, and just talking about that they used to call cannabis the gateway drug, and how alcohol is really a gateway drug. But
Oh.
actually, I'm going to tell a little story here about my recent discovery, I guess, is that, and this was really interesting for me to understand, is that I recently started just playing around with ketogenic diet, which is very, very low carb diet. And that actually was the most, I guess, eye-opening experience of my life when it came to my addiction to alcohol. And what it made me realize is that I think my addiction to alcohol was deeply entrenched in my addiction to sugar and carbohydrates. And so when I cut the sugar and carbohydrates out almost completely out of my life, I no longer was craving or wanting alcohol. And I thought that was really interesting. And so that really made me think deeply about the topic of addiction, and really what are the sources of really the deep-rooted addictions that I think have suffered with. And again, I think alcohol has been sort of this constant of things I've struggled with. And I'm not going to say I'm like some kind of bad alcohol addict, but I've certainly had struggles with sort of, I guess, for me, I can not drink alcohol and I'm fine, but if I drink alcohol, I want to drink alcohol more. It's sort of like 1 is too much, 12 is never enough. That's my problem. But really, this experience with keto and not having carbohydrates freed me from my addiction and my cravings and desires for alcohol. And I thought that was a really, really interesting thing. So back to what you said, Christina, is about awareness and self-awareness. And fundamentally, when it comes to life by design, it's really looking in deep and really understanding what it is, what's the underlying driver, what's the underlying factor, what's the underlying thing. And to me, I think it's actually the carbohydrates. If I can control my carbohydrates, I cannot have as many weaknesses when it comes to alcohol. So in the evening, if I have a bunch of treats and a bunch of pie and a bunch of whatever, and I'm like in this path of not really good, healthy behaviors, that's more likely to lead to me getting a drink than if I eat really clean and really healthy, and I have my last really healthy meal at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. and it's all been clean and healthy all day, very low carb, then I don't get these weaknesses to make me want to go have that drink. So I think for me, that's why in this chapter, I'm going to talk a lot about really getting aligned with yourself and really going in deep and really trying to understand the root sort of causes, I guess, or root sort of root issues or root, I don't know, whatever it is. But to me, again, it's just this carbohydrates are really actually maybe at the core of everything. And we're very, very addicted as a society to carbohydrates. I see it everywhere. I see it all the time. Really bad. So anyways, I'm not here to judge about anything, but I'm just sort of sharing my experience.
I thought you were going to say I'm not here because to do another fitness bro with a fitness podcast. But I think too, I just think, again, going back to this kind of notion of habits, I had a good conversation actually this weekend with a friend around just like this. Wherever you are in life, there's a culture that follows you. Everyone knows that we kind of came from a political background. So this friend I was talking to also had a political background. He lived the life of the legislature, and you talk about alcohol as an addiction or a habit. I think that it will be of no surprise that when we worked in the legislature 15 20 years ago, like that was a thing. Like drinking was a thing, and it wasn't, oh, we're all addicts, but maybe we were. But it was like you were drinking, you were out for drinks after work, you were drinking at political events. Every political event was centered around the notion of alcohol. And so we had this very interesting conversation about how prevalent that is or was in politics. And then we were kind of relating it to the energy sector. So both of him and myself worked in the energy sector, and that's a huge culture too, right? You're leaving for work on a Friday afternoon, and you're meeting people for drinks, or you're having that glass of wine at lunch, and you're meeting at the petroleum club. I just think there's a lot of conversation right now about, you phone your friend, and especially if you're kind of this Gen X, Sennial, Millennial generation, we're tied to this. We are meeting up for drinks. We're meeting up to do these things. I think you and I have had a very kind of interesting past few years, I would say, since the kids are born. It's no surprise, we talk about it often, that we want to be really engaged parents. We obviously love that morning routine and that morning life. And when you're drinking your face off the night before, it makes the morning routine a little bit harder, right? And I think that, we both realized early on too that, when you're up that early and you've been drinking the night before, you're not your best self, and you're not showing up for your kids or for your partner or for any of those factors in your life. When you're running your business, you're not showing up for your business. And I think that probably in the past, our kids are 6 now, probably in the past 5 years has been something that I've really tried to live. I used to, as again a political kid and someone in energy, could drink a lot, and I'm really glad that that's something that I don't need anymore. I think that, again, I never thought of myself as a morning person, mostly probably because I was having a glass of wine before bed every night. Right. And so you change one habit and you really do change your life. And I think that, our kids very much are attuned and watching. They're not watching our alcohol intake, but, they know that, okay, this is a thing we do at a nice restaurant, or, they know that mom and dad are really aware of when they're stopping and not, and they know mom and, they don't know this, oh, mom and dad are tired because they drank too much. It's not, because it's just not something that we do because we've prioritized something else. But, again, back to this conversation that I had this weekend with a friend, for us, we were just talking about like the next generation. And, it seems like there are some habits that are breaking. I think that potentially this kind of notion of alcohol is changing a little bit. Not that people don't go out anymore, but it seems to be. However, what we did say is we were talking about some of the younger people that we do know who've grown up in politics or grown up in this energy sector. They definitely haven't broken that cycle. They definitely are the ones that, we were talking about, pointing to, of like, there's still a rich culture of it here, in politics, but, not necessarily here in the, I don't forget what sector we were talking about, tech or something different. So, again, I think these habits are ingrained in the culture we're in, and it's up to us to change it. I think for me, I face it quite a bit. You have this mom culture. Mommy needs wine, mommy juice, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I've never prescribed to that. I actually, sulfates really bother me. So wine is not a thing for me anymore. And, it's something that, again, I think this peer pressure follows you no matter where you are.
Yeah. And I just, again, this chapter of my book is going to be called Addicts Raising Addicts. And I think about just being a parent and the habits and the things we do subconsciously or unconsciously, that is really training our kids, right? And it's really hard. And again, this isn't meant to be a judgment of anybody or anything, but right, I mean, it could be fast food, it could be TV, it could be you're on Instagram on your phone all the time and your kids are watching and they're trying to get your attention, and right, like every single thing we do as adults, as parents, is essentially teaching our kids a way to behave, whether we know it or not. And I observe it all the time with us, with our friends, with people out there in the public or whatever. And right. And, we're all in our phones a lot, as a good example. And we're often not fully giving attention to our children. And we're teaching them that right? That the attention goes to the phone, right? And as an example, right? So I think it's just really, again, the purpose of this chapter for me when it comes in the context of life by design is all about just awareness and being self-aware of your addictions. And I think it's a human condition. I think addiction is a human sort of condition in general. And you use the word habits actually. And so on the positive side, you can call it a habit. On the if you want to sugarcoat a bad side, you call it a habit. And then if it's really bad, then we call it an addiction. And then we say, oh, those people are bad over there, right? And so my only goal and hope with this chapter is for people to understand that we're all addicts into something in some way, shape, or form, whether it's positive or negative. And then we're teaching our children those addictions, again, whether it's positive or negative, it's not even, it doesn't even matter. But the point is to be self-aware of it, and sometimes to take yourself out of that loop, if you will, right? And so to me, life by design is all about that. And so, and I think about sometimes some of these addictions, I think about the word comfort zones as well, right? And so sometimes it's comfortable to go watch TV, or to put your kids in front of the TV, or it's the easy thing to do, or put your kids in front of the TV so you can spend some time on your phone on Instagram at the end of the day to unwind or whatever. And it's easy to, oh, this is just the way I unwind. But you could also get on a bike with your kids and go for a bike ride and share some really meaningful experiences together, right? And so to me, being comfortable is an addiction as well, right? You can be addicted to being comfortable, and you don't grow in those times, right? Comfort is a time where growth doesn't happen. And so I think, again, from a context of life by design and a chapter in a book, it's, geez, I'm getting a little comfortable. I need to maybe I'm addicted to a certain behavior. Again, it doesn't have to be crack cocaine. It could be just something a lot more mild, and seemingly not damaging, but maybe it is a little damaging. Anytime you're spending too much time in your comfort zone, you're probably not growing enough, and that's something that needs to be addressed.
I think it's about awareness. Like that's what I would just call it, awareness, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, yesterday you went on a hike with the boys, and, the kids had a really active weekend to date. So, we did a lot of relaxing. What was interesting is our internet and cable were out for most of the day, but, it doesn't mean we were like making these like really, oh my God, we're making these intense memories but like maybe we were, I don't know, we worked on a puzzle, we cleaned up the house and did some chores. We took a bike ride to the farmer's market to get some groceries. But, then when the cable went back on, yeah, we did watch TV. I think what's funny in our house is like, usually if the kids are watching TV and I'm home by myself, it's because I want to take a nap. So it's like this awareness, and the kids know that, like, and they're funny, right? Like, they're like, hope that you fall asleep so that we get even more TV. Right. But I just think it's about awareness, right? Like, I think that, you and I make some pretty big rules around screens when it comes to vacations. I mean, our kids are 6, we don't have iPads in the house. And again, it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a decision we've made. I think that, we value outside time, we value those things. And like, our kids have iPads at school. I think there's brilliant things they're learning from them. And I think that our kids need to be educated on technology from an early age. It's all they're going to know. But again, we're aware, right? So, we went to Windermere a few weeks ago, and for us, it was like, no, there are no screens on this vacation. There was no TV where we were staying. It was about enjoying each other, enjoying nature. And, there was one rainy night. Well, yeah, I pulled the laptop out and we all got to snuggle in bed and watch a show. And it became a special treat as opposed to just the norm of what we do.
The expectation. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think relating it back to business too, when it comes to awareness and when it comes to habits or addictions or things. I mean, I think the default is, being addicted to work and working all the time and not knowing when to shut off. But I also think something interesting in our business that I've seen from a staff perspective is, you get into these habits of, this is how I do something. Because this is how it's always been done, or it's because this person before me showed it to me this way. And, again, I think it's that when you notice you're driving home When you notice you're not paying attention to where you're driving home and you're just all of a sudden home, that to me is always an indicator of like change the route.
Yeah.
You're obviously not paying attention anymore. So like change the route up a bit so you're staying fresh. And I'd say the same thing from a work perspective. I mean, I challenge our staff, but I also challenge anyone who's in a work situation where, you know, work is becoming a rinse and repeat. Yeah, I think some tasks, absolutely. But, you know, if all of a sudden, you know, turn that light switch on of awareness, and if you're not delivering the results that you're hoping to, or things are seeming a little bit grindy, or, you know, maybe things are seeming a little bit too easy, change the route up, right? Where are you adding value? Where are you not? Especially if you're kind of at this place where you're seeing you're not driving results. Okay, let's look at the process. You know, is there something that I'm missing? Is there something I've forgotten? Going back to that operating procedure, those principles. I think too is the tool an issue, right? Why isn't this working? Well, this is the tool that everyone's using for how many ever years. Well, maybe it's not the right tool anymore, or right. So I think that there's these, you know, addictions or habits or whatever at work that you get into because that's just how it is. But really what I'd say is awareness, right? Be aware. If something feels right, great, keep at it. See how you can keep adding value. If something doesn't, I feel like something I try to tell myself is it giving you energy, or is it not giving you energy? So back to your whole carbs thing. Obviously, when you eat 100, you know, things of carbs, it's taking energy from you. Whereas if you fill up on that great salad or proteins or whatever, you're getting energy. So same thing at work. Is this task taking energy from me, or am I driving results and it's giving me energy and it's making me excited? I think it's a really good litmus test for, is this habit good or bad?
Totally. Well, and on the exact same note, I mean, the whole concept of life by design is, are you on autopilot, or are you actually doing something consciously, right? And so again, addiction to me is just a manifestation of kind of an autopilot behavior, where you're kind of asleep and you're just allowing whatever addiction to be in charge, or whatever to sort of take over and be in charge, and you're not being conscious about it. So that's, again, back to that idea of self-awareness. So there you go. There's addiction, addicts raising addicts. We're all addicts in some way, shape, or form to something. And I just urge everybody thinking about addiction not to just think down on that person that's down in the gutter in a really bad place, because that's the worst that's maybe the worst sort of case. But we all struggle in one way, shape, or form with addiction somehow, somewhere. So I think the more we can be aware of that, the better we can be as a society, and the better we can all live our life by design.
Wow. So then now you can just go write that chapter of your book today, since we've all fleshed it out for you. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Two Babies in a Business. To learn more, visit CIPRcommunications.com or catch us on our socials at CIPR Comms.